Imagine this, you're a devoted wife, 5 months pregnant after years of heartache, lying on that cold ultrasound table, heart bursting with joy as you FaceTime your billionaire husband to share the miracle. But in the window's reflection, you catch him locked in a passionate kiss with his young assistant. Your world crumbles: lies, gambling debts, forged divorces, and a web of criminal conspiracies that threaten your baby and everything you hold dear. But what if the mistress's ruthless plan backfires spectacularly, turning the betrayed wife into an unstoppable force of empowerment and revenge? This is Mistress Betrayed Billionaire and Pregnant Wife. Her plan backfired. A roller coaster of heartbreak, twists, and triumph that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stick around to hear every shocking detail. If this hooked you like it did me, smash that like button if you're Team Sarah. Comment your wildest plot twist prediction below. Share this drama bomb with your friends, and hit subscribe with notifications on so you never miss another epic story. Unpack, let's dive in. Sarah Martinez had imagined this moment countless times over the past 5 months. Lying on the cold examination table, the ultrasound gel cool against her rounded belly, she watched the monitor with tears of pure joy streaming down her face. At 42, this pregnancy had been unexpected, but deeply wanted after years of failed attempts. "There's your baby's heartbeat, Doctor," Collins said with a warm smile, adjusting the ultrasound wand. "Strong and steady at 20 weeks. Sarah's heart swelled as she watched the tiny form on the screen, fingers and toes clearly visible. This was the moment she had been waiting to share with Michael, her husband of 20 years. With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone to FaceTime him. "Michael, honey, are you there?" she called out as the call connected. "You have to see this. Our baby is perfect." The screen showed Michael's office, his mahogany desk cluttered with papers, and his leather chair turned away from the camera. Sarah could hear voices in the background. "Michael," she called again, louder this time. That's when she saw it. In the reflection of the window behind his desk, clear as day, Michael was pressed against the wall with a young woman in his arms. Their lips were locked in a passionate kiss, her hands tangled in his silver hair. The woman was Valentina Brooks, his 28-year-old assistant. Sarah recognized her immediately from the company Christmas party just 3 months ago, when Valentina had complimented Sarah's dress with what she now realized was a predatory smile. Sarah's phone slipped from her numb fingers, clattering to the floor. "Mrs. Martinez, are you all right?" "Doctor," Collins asked, concern etching her features. But Sarah couldn't speak. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of being the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, the perfect supporter of his dreams, reduced to pixels on a phone screen. The husband affair with Mistress she was witnessing felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "I need to go," Sarah whispered, struggling to sit up as her pregnant belly made the movement awkward. "Doctor," Collins handed her tissues, but Sarah was already moving, pulling on her coat with shaking hands. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to process what she had just seen. Outside the clinic, rain had begun to fall, matching the storm brewing in Sarah's heart. She sat in her BMW, hyperventilating as rain pounded the windshield. Through the water-distorted glass, the world looked as fractured as her marriage suddenly felt. 20 years, as she whispered to herself, watching the rain create rivulets down the window, like the tears on her cheeks. 20 years of my life. Her mind raced through their relationship highlights. Their first date at the little Italian restaurant in downtown Seattle. Their wedding day, when Michael had promised to love her through sickness and health, for richer or poorer. The early years when his tech startup was just a dream, and she had worked double shifts as a marketing executive to support them both. She had given up her career when his company took off, becoming the perfect wife who managed their home, their social calendar, their entire life while he built his empire. And this was how he repaid her devotion. Sarah's hands instinctively moved to her belly. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered. "Mommy thought we were bringing you into a happy family." Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Sorry, missed your call. In meetings all day." How did the appointment go? The casual tone, the easy lie, it all felt like salt in an open wound. Sarah stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. How do you respond when your world has just imploded instead of responding? She opened Instagram, her fingers moving almost automatically to Valentina's profile. What she found there made her stomach turn. Photo after photo of expensive gifts, romantic dinners, weekend getaways. The timeline matched perfectly with moments when Michael had claimed to be on business trips or working late. There was the diamond bracelet from their supposed anniversary weekend in Napa when Michael had told her he was in meetings with investors in San Francisco. The roses from Valentine's Day when he had said the flower shop was closed so he couldn't get her anything. The weekend in Paris when he was allegedly closing a deal with European clients. But the final knife to her heart was a photo from just last week. Valentina wearing the emerald necklace that Sarah had found on her dresser with a note that said, "For my beautiful wife on our 20th anniversary." The same necklace that was apparently a hand-me-down from his mistress. Sarah's phone rang, startling her from her investigation. Unknown number. "Hello," she answered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Mrs. Martinez, this is going to sound crazy, but we need to talk. Your husband is not the man you think he is. Meet me tomorrow at Pike Place Market, by the flower stand at 10 a.m. Come alone and don't tell Michael, a friend." The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone, her heart hammering. Who was this mysterious caller? What did they know about Michael that she didn't? And more importantly, after what she had just discovered, did she really want to know the truth as she drove home through the Seattle rain? Sarah's mind spun with questions and fears. The heartbreaking family drama that had just begun was about to get much worse, though she couldn't imagine how. Her pregnancy, which should have been the happiest time of her life, now felt like a complication in what was clearly going to be a very messy situation. The house that had felt like home for 15 years now looked foreign to her as she pulled into the circular driveway. The sprawling modern estate with its floor-to-ceiling windows and perfectly manicured landscape suddenly felt like a prison. Michael's Porsche wasn't in the garage yet. He was probably still with her, still lying about meetings and business calls. Sarah wondered how long this had been going on. How many other women had there been? How naive had she been to trust him completely inside? The silence was deafening. Sarah had always loved the quiet elegance of their home, but now it felt empty and cold. She walked through the rooms she had so carefully decorated, remembering how proud Michael had been when Architectural Digest had featured their home 3 years ago. The perfect power couple, the article had called them. Michael Martinez, tech visionary, and his devoted wife Sarah, the woman behind the man. What a joke that seemed now. Sarah made herself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in the breakfast nook overlooking Puget Sound. The rain was coming down harder now, and she could barely make out the Seattle skyline through the storm. It felt fitting somehow, like even the weather was reflecting her mood. Her phone buzzed with another text from Michael. "Running late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." The casual lie, delivered so smoothly, made her nauseous. How many nights had he used work as an excuse to be with Valentina? How many times had she prepared dinner that went cold while he was making love to another woman? Sarah's hand moved to her belly again, feeling the slight flutter of movement from their baby. This child deserved better than a father who could betray his family so casually. This baby deserved parents who could provide stability and love, not the chaos that was about to engulf their lives. She thought about calling her sister Maria in Portland. But what would she say? "Hi, I just discovered my husband is having an affair with his assistant while I'm pregnant with our first child together." The words felt too heavy, too real to speak out loud. Instead, she opened her laptop and did what she had always done when faced with a problem she researched. She looked up divorce lawyers in Seattle, reading reviews and fees. She researched the Washington state laws about community property and spousal support. She looked up statistics on pregnancy and stress, worried about what this emotional trauma might be doing to her baby. The numbers were sobering. In Washington, marital property was split equally, But with Michael's wealth largely tied up in his company and various offshore investments, things could get complicated quickly, and the stress of a high-conflict divorce during pregnancy could lead to serious health complications. Sarah closed the laptop and tried to focus on breathing. Dr. Collins had taught her breathing exercises for the birth, but she found herself using them now to avoid a panic attack. By the time she heard Michael's car in the driveway at 11 p.m., Sarah had made a decision. She would meet this mysterious caller tomorrow. She would find out what other secrets her husband was hiding, and then she would decide how to protect herself and her baby from the wreckage of her marriage. Michael came in through the kitchen, loosening his tie and looking every inch the successful executive. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit expensive and well-tailored. He was still a handsome man at 45, which had always made Sarah feel lucky to be married to him. Now it just made her feel foolish. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, kissing her forehead with the same lips that had been on Valentina earlier. "How did the appointment go? Is our little miracle still cooking in there?" The casual affection, the easy endearments, the way he placed his hand on her belly, it all felt like a performance now. Sarah wondered how long he had been acting the part of devoted husband while living a double life. "The baby's fine," she managed to say. "Healthy heartbeat, growing normally." "That's wonderful news," Michael said. But Sarah noticed he was already checking his phone, scrolling through messages even as he spoke to her. "I'm sorry I couldn't be there. The investors' meeting ran long, and then Marcus needed to go over the quarterly projections." Another lie, delivered so smoothly it was almost artistic. Sarah wondered if she had always been this gullible, or if Michael had just gotten that good at deception. "It's okay," she said, because what else could she say? "I recorded it on my phone so you could see later." The irony wasn't lost on her. She had recorded her husband's betrayal on the same device that was supposed to capture their baby's first images. "I'd love to see it," Michael said, but he was still looking at his phone. "Maybe tomorrow. I'm exhausted tonight." Sarah nodded, watching as he headed upstairs to shower. She wondered if he was washing off Valentina's perfume, erasing the evidence of his afternoon betrayal. That night, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling, while Michael slept peacefully beside her. His breathing was steady and calm, the sleep of a man with no guilty conscience. Sarah, meanwhile, felt like her entire world had shifted off its axis. She thought about their early years, when they had been genuinely happy, when Michael would bring her coffee in bed, and they would spend Sunday mornings reading the paper together, when he would rub her feet after her long days at the marketing firm, when he would talk about their future children and the family they would build together. Had any of it been real, or had she been living in a fantasy while he had always been the type of man who could betray his pregnant wife without losing a moment's sleep? As dawn broke over Puget Sound, Sarah finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, her dreams filled with ultrasound images and faceless phone calls and the sound of rain that never stopped falling. She had no idea that tomorrow's meeting would reveal secrets that would make her husband's affair seem like the least of her problems. Sarah arrived at Pike Place Market 15 minutes early, her nerves making it impossible to sit still at home. The famous fish-throwing vendors were already in full swing, entertaining the morning tourists with their theatrical displays. The scent of fresh flowers mixed with coffee and sea air, usually one of her favorite Seattle combinations, now seemed overwhelming to her sensitive pregnancy nose. She positioned herself near the flower stand as instructed, clutching a cup of ginger tea to settle her stomach. Her phone had been suspiciously quiet all morning. No good morning text from Michael, no check-in calls. She wondered if he was with Valentina, perhaps planning their next secret getaway. "Mrs. Martinez." Sarah turned to find a well-dressed Asian man in his 50s approaching her. He looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place him. "I'm Marcus Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Michael's business partner." Recognition dawned. She had met Marcus numerous times at company events and dinner parties. He was Michael's CFO and had been with the company since the early days. What on earth could he want to tell her about her husband that required such secrecy? "Mr. Chen," she said carefully, "you're the one who called—" Marcus nodded, his expression grim. "Please call me Marcus. And yes, I called because There are things you need to know about your husband that go far beyond his affair with Valentina. Sarah's stomach dropped. You know about that. Everyone at the company knows about it, Marcus said gently. I'm sorry. Sarah, Michael hasn't been discreet, but that's not why I called you. They walked to a quieter corner of the market, away from the crowds. Marcus looked around nervously before speaking. Sarah, I've been Michael's friend for 20 years. Since before you two met, I was the best man at your wedding. I've watched you build a life together, and I've watched Michael change from the man who used to talk about you constantly into someone I barely recognize. What are you trying to tell me? Sarah asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Michael has a gambling problem, Marcus said bluntly. A serious one. He's been betting on everything from sports to crypto to high-stakes poker games. The company is in financial trouble because he's been siphoning money to cover his debts. Sarah felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. That's impossible. We just signed papers last month for his new investment fund. The company is more profitable than ever. Marcus shook his head sadly. The investment fund is a shell. The profits are on paper only. Michael has been moving money through offshore accounts to hide the losses. We're looking at potential bankruptcy within 6 months if something doesn't change. But our house, our savings, Sarah began. All leveraged, Marcus said. I'm sorry, Sarah. Michael has been using your joint assets as collateral for his gambling debts. If the wrong people come calling, you could lose everything. Sarah sat down heavily on a nearby bench, her head spinning. Pregnant wife discovers husband's double life with younger mistress was turning into something far worse than simple infidelity. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Marcus sat beside her, his expression conflicted. Because I care about you, and because I think you deserve to know what you're up against. Also because I think Michael is planning to divorce you before the financial collapse becomes public. That way, he can protect himself legally while leaving you holding the bag. That's why he filed those papers, Sarah whispered, remembering finding them on her laptop the night before. What papers? Marcus asked sharply. I found divorce papers on my computer last night, already filed, with my signature forged. Marcus cursed under his breath. He's moving faster than I thought. Sarah, you need to get a lawyer immediately. A good one who specializes in complex financial cases. Sarah's mind was reeling. The heartbreaking family drama she thought she was facing was becoming a financial and legal nightmare. Her pregnancy, which should have been protective, was now making her more vulnerable. I can recommend someone, Marcus continued. Elena Vasquez. She's a divorce attorney, but she also happens to be a therapist. She helped me through my own divorce 3 years ago. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Sarah asked. I think I know her. We went to college together. Small world, Marcus said. She's good. Sarah, she'll fight for you. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. She showed the message to Marcus, who snorted in disgust. He's probably with Valentina, planning their next move. Sarah, there's something else you should know about her. And what now? Sarah asked, not sure she could handle any more revelations. Valentina isn't just some innocent assistant who got swept off her feet by the boss. She's been targeting wealthy married men for years. This is her pattern. Get close to the wife, gain her trust, then seduce the husband and manipulate the situation for maximum financial gain. Sarah thought about Valentina's friendly overtures at company events, her compliments on Sarah's cooking, her interest in Sarah's pregnancy journey. It had all been a calculated manipulation. I feel like such a fool, Sarah said, tears threatening again. You're not a fool, Marcus said firmly. You're a trusting person who believed in your marriage. That's not foolish. It's admirable. But now you need to protect yourself and your baby. They walked back through the market in silence, Sarah's mind spinning with everything she had learned. Her perfect life, her secure future, her trust in the man she had loved for 20 years. All of it was crumbling around her. As they reached the parking area, Marcus handed her a business card. That's Elena's number. Call her today, and Sarah, be careful. If Michael is as desperate as I think he is, he might try to discredit you or make you seem unstable. Document everything. Save all your communications. And don't let him know that you know about any of this yet." Sarah nodded numbly, tucking the card into her purse. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Won't this hurt your business relationship with Michael?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because 20 years ago, when Michael met you, he was a different man, a better man. You made him better. Sarah, watching what he's become, what he's willing to do to you and your baby, I can't be part of that." As Sarah drove home, she called Dr. Elena Vasquez's office and managed to get an emergency appointment for that afternoon. She spent the drive trying to process everything Marcus had told her, but it felt like trying to hold water in her hands. At home, she walked through the rooms with new eyes. The expensive artwork, the designer furniture, the renovated kitchen. Was any of it really theirs, or was it all built on lies and gambling debts? She thought about calling Michael, confronting him with what she had learned, but Marcus's warning echoed in her mind. She needed to be smart about this, not emotional. She needed to protect her baby and secure her future before Michael realized she knew the truth. The appointment with Elena was a revelation. Her former college roommate had indeed become both a successful attorney and a licensed therapist, specializing in helping women navigate high-conflict divorces. "Sarah," Elena said warmly as she welcomed her into her office, "I heard through the grapevine that you had married Michael Martinez. I always wondered how you were doing." "Not well, apparently," Sarah said, and found herself telling Elena everything. The affair, the gambling, the forged divorce papers, the financial house of cards that was about to collapse. Elena listened without judgment, taking notes and asking pointed questions about documentation and assets. "This is like something out of The Good Wife," Sarah said at one point. "Except I feel like Elizabeth, finding out that my husband's crimes might be worse than I ever imagined. The difference is that this is your life, not a TV show," Elena said gently. "But like Alicia Florrick, you're stronger than you know. We just need to help you find that strength." They spent 2 hours going over Sarah's options. Elena explained Washington's community property laws, discussed strategies for protecting Sarah's interests, and outlined the steps they would need to take to secure evidence of Michael's financial crimes. "The most important thing right now is that you continue to act normal," Elena advised. "Don't let Michael know that you're aware of any of this. We need time to build our case and protect your assets before he can do any more damage." "What about the baby?" Sarah asked, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. "We'll monitor your stress levels closely. I'm going to recommend a therapist who specializes in pregnancy and trauma. You need support through this. Sarah, you don't have to face this alone." As Sarah left Elena's office, she felt simultaneously empowered and terrified. She had a plan now, a legal strategy, but she also knew that the next few months were going to be the hardest of her life. That evening, Michael came home with flowers and a cheerful smile. "How was your day, sweetheart?" he asked, kissing her cheek. "Fine," Sarah managed to say, accepting the roses that probably came from the same florist where he bought Valentina's flowers. "I was thinking we should start planning the nursery this weekend," Michael said. "Maybe we could go look at cribs and changing tables." The casual way he could plan for their baby's future while simultaneously planning to abandon them both was staggering. Sarah wondered if this was what it felt like to be married to a sociopath. "That sounds nice," she said, because what else could she say as they ate dinner? Michael chatted about his day, spinning lies so smoothly that Sarah almost believed them herself. He talked about meetings that probably never happened, decisions that were likely being made to cover up his gambling losses, future plans that he had no intention of honoring. "I love you, you know," he said as they were cleaning up. "You and this baby are the most important things in my life." Sarah looked at him, this man she had loved for 20 years, and realized she was looking at a stranger. The Michael she had married, the man who had once stayed up all night when she had food poisoning, who had cried when her mother died, who had proposed on the beach where they had first said, "I love you." That man was either gone or had never existed at all. "I love you too," she said, and hated herself for the lie. That night, as Michael slept peacefully beside her, Sarah lay awake staring at the ceiling and planning her escape from the wreckage of her marriage. She thought about the baby growing inside her, about the future she had imagined for their little family, about the life she was going to have to build from scratch. Midlife betrayal story was just the beginning. She realized. The real story was going to be about what came next, about who she chose to become when everything she had believed about her life turned out to be false. Outside, the Seattle rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean for a new day. 2 weeks later, Sarah's carefully maintained facade was beginning to crack. She had been documenting everything. Michael's late nights, his mysterious phone calls, his credit card statements that she secretly photographed. Elena had helped her open a separate bank account and begin moving money from their joint savings. But they had to be careful not to trigger any alerts that might tip Michael off. The stress was taking its toll. During her routine prenatal appointment, Dr. Collins frowned at the blood pressure reading. "Sarah, your blood pressure is dangerously elevated. We're looking at 140/90. That's concerning, especially at 22 weeks. Sarah tried to slow her breathing, but her heart was racing. "I've been under some stress lately." "What kind of stress?" Dr. Collins asked, pulling up a chair. "Because we need to address this immediately. High blood pressure during pregnancy can lead to preeclampsia, which can be life-threatening for both you and the baby." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had been so focused on protecting herself legally and financially that she hadn't fully considered what the emotional toll might be doing to her pregnancy. "My marriage is falling apart," she admitted. "I found out my husband is having an affair, and there are other complications. Legal complications." Dr. Collins nodded sympathetically. "I'm going to recommend bed rest for the next week, and I want you to start seeing a counselor who specializes in pregnancy and stress management. This is serious. Sarah, your baby's health depends on getting your stress levels under control." As Sarah left the doctor's office with a prescription for blood pressure medication and strict orders to rest, she felt like her world was spiraling completely out of control. The catastrophic event she had been dreading was happening to her body, the one thing she thought she could still control. Her phone rang as she sat in the parking lot, trying not to panic. "Sarah." It was Elena. "I have some bad news. Michael's attorney contacted me this morning. He's accelerated the divorce proceedings and he's claiming that you're mentally unstable and unfit to care for the baby." "What?" Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. "Apparently he has evidence that you've been behaving erratically, making false accusations about him, and that your pregnancy hormones have made you delusional. He's asking for temporary custody of the baby when it's born, pending a psychological evaluation of you." Sarah felt her blood pressure spike again. "He can't do that. The baby isn't even born yet." "He can try." And Sarah, there's more. "He's claiming that the house, the cars, even your wedding ring are company property and that you have no legal claim to them. He's changed the locks on the house. You can't go home." The phone slipped from Sarah's numb fingers. She was sitting in a medical center parking lot, pregnant and essentially homeless, while her husband of 20 years was systematically destroying her life. She called Marcus immediately. "I heard," he said before she could speak. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. He moved faster than we anticipated." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, hysteria creeping into her voice. "Elena said you could stay with her temporarily." "Sarah, there's something else. I've been doing some digging into Michael's financial situation. It's worse than I thought. He owes money to some very dangerous people." "What do you mean dangerous?" "I mean people who don't accept 'I'll pay you next week' as an answer. People who might see you and the baby as leverage to make Michael pay up." Sarah's world tilted completely off its axis. Not only was she losing her home and her marriage, but she and her baby might actually be in physical danger. "I'm scared, Marcus," she whispered. "I know, but we're going to figure this out. Elena is good at what she does, and I'm going to help however I can. That evening, Sarah found herself in Elena's guest bedroom, surrounded by hastily packed suitcases and trying to process how her life had changed so dramatically in just one day. Elena had picked her up from the medical center and helped her gather some belongings from the house while Michael was at work. The locks had indeed been changed, but Elena knew a locksmith who specialized in domestic situations. Technically, you still have legal rights to the property until the divorce is finalized, Elena had explained. But we need to be strategic about when and how you access it. Now, sitting on Elena's guest bed with her hands on her belly, Sarah felt utterly defeated. The peak despair moment had arrived, and she felt like she was drowning. Elena knocked softly on the door. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know how much more I can take," Sarah admitted. "The doctor says the stress is dangerous for the baby, but I don't know how to stop being stressed when my entire life is falling apart." Elena sat beside her on the bed. "You know, I went through something similar when my ex-husband left me for his secretary. Not as complex as your situation, but I remember feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under me." "How did you get through it?" "One day at a time, and by realizing that I was stronger than I thought I was." "You are too, Sarah. You just can't see it right now because you're in survival mode." I keep thinking about that scene in The Good Wife where Alicia finds out about Peter's affairs, and she just has to keep functioning, keep appearing normal for the kids. Except I don't have that luxury. Michael is actively trying to destroy me. "The difference is that you have people fighting for you," Elena said. "You have legal representation, you have Marcus looking out for your financial interests, and you have me. You're not alone in this." That night, Sarah tried to sleep but kept jolting awake with anxiety. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined worst-case scenarios. Michael getting custody of their baby, losing everything in the divorce, being investigated by Child Protective Services for being an unfit mother. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and opened her laptop. She started Googling everything she could find about Michael's company, about financial fraud, about her legal rights as a pregnant woman in a divorce. What she found made her stomach turn. There were articles about tech companies that had collapsed due to executive gambling addictions, stories about wives who had lost everything when their husbands' crimes came to light, message boards full of women sharing their experiences with financial abuse and legal manipulation. But there were also stories of women who had fought back and won, women who had exposed their husbands' crimes and rebuilt their lives, women who had protected their children and found happiness again. Sarah bookmarked those stories. She was going to need inspiration for what was ahead. The next morning brought more bad news. Elena called with an update from Michael's attorney. "They're claiming that your accusation about the affair and the gambling are part of a pattern of paranoid delusions brought on by pregnancy hormones. They want you to undergo psychological evaluation." "Let them," Sarah said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. "I'll take any evaluation they want. I'm not the one with the gambling addiction and the secret mistress." "That's the spirit," Elena said approvingly. "We're also going to start building our own case. I want to depose Valentina, and I want to subpoena Michael's financial records." "Will that work?" "It might. But Sarah, you need to be prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better. Michael is playing hardball, which means we need to as well." That afternoon, Sarah attempted to return to her career. She had been a successful marketing executive before her marriage, and she thought maybe she could find freelance work to support herself during the divorce proceedings. But the job interviews were brutal. Despite her impressive resume, potential employers seemed hesitant to hire a pregnant woman in her 40s who hadn't worked in 15 years. "We've decided to go with someone more energetic," said the hiring manager at the third marketing firm she visited. Sarah understood the subtext. They wanted someone younger, someone without pregnancy complications, someone who didn't represent the messy complications of midlife. As she sat in her car after the rejection, she felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. She was facing a legal battle she couldn't afford, a pregnancy that was becoming high risk due to stress, and a job market that didn't want her. Her phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Curiosity got the better of her, and she opened the app to find that Valentina had posted a new video. It was a TikTok-style clip with trendy music and quick cuts. The caption read, "When you're living your best life but the bitter ex-wife is trying to destroy true love, some people just can't accept that their time is over." New life, true love, moving on. The video showed Valentina in what looked like an expensive restaurant, wearing designer clothes and jewelry that Sarah recognized as pieces Michael had claimed were business expenses. There were shots of Valentina's manicured hands showing off her engagement ring, a ring that looked suspiciously like the one Michael had proposed to Sarah with 20 years ago. But the worst part was the ending of the video, where Valentina placed her hands on her own slightly rounded belly and mouthed the words, "Our future starts now." The video had already been viewed thousands of times, with comments ranging from supportive to vicious. Some users were calling Sarah pathetic and jealous. Others were praising Valentina for fighting for her happiness. Sarah realized that Valentina was waging a public relations war, painting herself as the victim and Sarah as the villain. It was a brilliant strategy, actually. By controlling the narrative on social media, Valentina was building public support for her side of the story. Sarah screenshotted everything and sent it to Elena. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She started her own social media account, not to fight back directly, but to tell her own story. She posted a simple photo of her pregnant belly with the caption, "20 weeks and counting, building a future for my baby, one day at a time." She didn't mention Michael or Valentina or the divorce. She just started documenting her journey as a pregnant woman starting over at 42. That night, Elena came home with Chinese takeout and a bottle of sparkling cider. "What are we celebrating?" Sarah asked. "Your psychological evaluation came back," Elena said with a grin. "Completely normal. No signs of delusion, paranoia, or pregnancy-related mental health issues. The psychologist noted that you're dealing with an extraordinary amount of stress in a remarkably healthy way." Does that help our case? It destroys their case. They can't claim you're unfit if their own expert witness says you're mentally sound. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she could fight this. Maybe she could protect her baby and build a new life from the ashes of her old one. But as they sat eating Chinese food and planning their legal strategy, neither woman knew that Valentina was about to escalate the war in a way that would make everything they had faced so far look like a minor skirmish. Sarah's phone buzzed with another unknown number. "Mrs. Martinez, you don't know me, but I think we should talk. It's about Valentina Brooks. She's not who she says she is." Sarah woke up to her phone buzzing frantically. Notification after notification flooded her screen. Instagram comments, Facebook messages, Twitter mentions. Her simple post about her pregnancy had somehow gone viral overnight, but not in the way she had intended. Valentina had struck back with a vengeance. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, scrolling through the chaos. Elena hurried into the guest room, already dressed for work. "What's wrong?" "Valentina posted about me. She made it look like I'm stalking her." Sarah showed Elena her phone. Valentina had created an elaborate TikTok video that told a completely fabricated story. Using carefully edited screenshots and manipulated images, she had made it appear that Sarah was harassing her, sending threatening messages, and trying to sabotage her relationship with Michael. The video was titled, "When the Ex Won't Let Go, My Stalker Story," and it had already been viewed over 50,000 times. The comments were brutal. "Girl, get a restraining order against this psycho. Pregnant women can be so unstable. Feel sorry for that baby. She looks unhinged in that photo. Michael obviously upgraded. Why do bitter old wives always blame the younger woman? Move on. Lady." But the worst part was that Valentina had somehow obtained photos of Sarah from inside her own home. Pictures of her in her pajamas, looking disheveled and emotional. Images that could only have been taken by someone with access to her private spaces. "How did she get these?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. Elena studied the images carefully. "These look like they were taken through windows or maybe with hidden cameras." "Sarah, this is serious. She's been surveilling you. I thought I was going crazy these past few weeks, feeling like someone was watching me. We need to call the police, Elena said immediately. This is stalking and harassment. But before they could make the call, Sarah's phone rang. It was an unknown number. But after yesterday's mysterious call about Valentina, she decided to answer. Sarah Martinez. The voice was female, young, nervous. Yes. My name is Jessica Chen. I saw the video about you online. I think you should know that I went through the same thing with Valentina 2 years ago. Sarah's blood ran cold. What do you mean? She targeted my ex-husband. Same pattern. She got close to me first, became my friend, then seduced him and made me look like the crazy ex-wife when I tried to expose what was happening. Can you meet me? Sarah asked immediately. I need to know everything. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, far from Michael's usual haunts. Jessica turned out to be a petite woman in her 30s, with haunted eyes and nervous hands. I should have spoken up sooner, Jessica said, clutching her latte like a lifeline. But I was so destroyed by what happened, I just wanted to disappear. Tell me everything, Sarah said. My ex-husband was David Chen, Marcus's younger brother. He owned a successful restaurant chain. Valentina applied to be his marketing manager 3 years ago. She was brilliant at the job, and she made an effort to become friends with me. Girls' nights out, shopping trips. She even helped me plan David's birthday party. Sarah's stomach twisted with recognition. She did the same thing with me. Company parties, compliments about my cooking. Exactly. Then slowly, she started undermining my marriage. Little comments about how David seemed stressed, how maybe I wasn't supporting his career enough. She suggested that David needed someone who understood his business better. And then she made her move on him. Jessica nodded bitterly. But here's the thing. It wasn't about love. She was systematically stealing from his company, embezzling money, creating fake vendor accounts, forging his signature on contracts. When I finally figured out what was happening and tried to warn David, she convinced him that I was having a mental breakdown. Sarah felt like the pieces of a horrible puzzle were falling into place. What happened to your marriage? David divorced me and married Valentina. 6 months later, his company collapsed when the embezzlement came to light. By then, she had disappeared with over $2 million and left David to face the criminal charges alone. Where is she now? Here, apparently, doing the same thing to your husband. Sarah. Valentina Brooks isn't even her real name. Her birth name is Victoria Bratton. She's done this to at least 4 other men that I know of. Sarah was speechless. The pregnant wife humiliated online by husband's pregnant mistress situation was actually much more complex and dangerous than she had realized. I have documentation, Jessica continued. Police reports, financial records, even some recordings I made when I started to suspect what was happening. I've been trying to build a case against her for years, but she's always one step ahead. Why didn't you warn me sooner? I didn't know about you until I saw Marcus's name in some court documents. I put 2 and 2 together and started investigating. When I saw Valentina's video about you this morning, I knew I had to reach out. They spent 2 hours going over Jessica's evidence. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Valentina, or Victoria, was a professional con artist who specialized in targeting wealthy married men. She would infiltrate their lives, destroy their marriages, steal their money, and disappear before anyone could stop her. The pregnancy might not even be real, Jessica said. She faked a pregnancy with David too, used it to manipulate him into making financial decisions that benefited her. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her own belly. The idea that someone could fake something so sacred, so life-changing, was almost incomprehensible. We need to take this to Elena immediately, Sarah said. But when they arrived at Elena's office, they found her in crisis mode. Sarah, thank God you're here, Elena said, ushering them into her office. We have a problem, a big one. What now? Michael's in the hospital. Apparently, he was in a serious car accident this morning. And according to the hospital, His emergency contact and medical power of attorney is listed as Valentina Martinez. Martinez? Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. They're claiming they were legally married in Las Vegas 3 weeks ago, which would make your marriage invalid and void you of any legal rights regarding his medical decisions. Sarah sank into a chair, the room spinning around her. But we're still married. I never signed any divorce papers. Apparently, Michael filed for an emergency divorce in Nevada, claiming abandonment and mental incapacity on your part. If the marriage to Valentina is legal, then your marriage has been dissolved. Jessica spoke up for the first time. This is exactly what she did to David. She manipulated him into a quickie divorce and remarriage, then used her legal status to control everything when he was arrested. Elena looked at Jessica with sharp interest. Who are you? Sarah quickly explained about Jessica's connection to Valentina's previous crimes. Elena's expression grew more grim with each detail. This changes everything, Elena said. If we can prove that Valentina is a repeat offender, we can build a case for fraud and conspiracy. But first, we need to get to that hospital and figure out what's really happening with Michael. The drive to Seattle General Hospital felt like the longest 20 minutes of Sarah's life. Her mind was spinning with questions. Was Michael really injured? Or was this part of Valentina's plan if he was hurt? How badly? And what did it mean for her baby if Michael died and she was no longer legally his wife at the hospital? They were directed to the ICU waiting room. Sarah's heart sank when she saw Valentina there, dressed in designer clothes and playing the part of the grieving wife to perfection. Sarah, Valentina exclaimed when she saw them, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm so glad you're here. Michael has been asking for you. The performance was flawless. If Sarah hadn't known what she knew, she might have been fooled by Valentina's apparent concern. What happened? Sarah asked. Car accident on I-5. Someone ran a red light and hit him head on. He's in surgery now, but the doctors say he's going to be okay. Valentina dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I've been here since 6 a.m. Thank God I'm listed as his emergency contact. About that, Elena interjected, we're going to need to see some documentation of this alleged marriage. Valentina's mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of anger crossing her features before she composed herself. Of course, I have our marriage certificate right here. She pulled out a folder with what appeared to be official documents from Clark County, Nevada, but Jessica leaned over to look at them and immediately shook her head. These are fake, she whispered to Sarah. I've seen her forgeries before. The seal is wrong, and the signature doesn't match the samples I have of Michael's real signature. Before they could confront Valentina about the forged documents, a doctor approached the waiting area. Mrs. Martinez, he called out. Both Sarah and Valentina stood up. I'm Mrs. Martinez, Valentina said quickly. I'm his wife. The doctor looked confused, glancing between the two women. I'm sorry, but I can only speak with the patient's legal next of kin. Do you have identification? Of course, Valentina said, producing a driver's license that read Valentina Martinez. Sarah felt like she was trapped in a nightmare. Not only had Valentina apparently married Michael, she had legally changed her name to match. I'm sorry, the doctor said to Sarah, but unless you have legal documentation proving your relationship to the patient, I can't share medical information with you. As they were escorted out of the ICU waiting area, Sarah felt like she was losing her grip on reality. In the span of one morning, she had discovered that her husband's mistress was a career criminal, that her marriage might be legally void, and that she had no rights to make decisions about the father of her unborn child. This is what happened to David, Jessica said as they sat in Elena's car in the hospital parking lot. She manipulated the legal system to cut me out completely, then used her position to control everything. What's her endgame? Elena asked. Money. It's always about money. She'll wait until Michael recovers, then she'll convince him to make financial decisions that benefit her, transfer assets, change beneficiaries, maybe even modify his will. Then she'll disappear, leaving him to deal with the consequences. Unless he dies, Elena said grimly. In which case, as his legal widow, She would inherit everything. The thought hit Sarah like a physical blow. You think she caused the accident? I think Victoria Bratton is capable of anything, Jessica said, and I think we need to prove it before she destroys another life. As they drove away from the hospital, Sarah's phone buzzed with another social media notification. Valentina had posted an update about Michael's accident, painting herself as the devoted wife keeping vigil by his bedside. The comments were full of sympathy and support for her, while Sarah was increasingly being portrayed as the unstable ex-wife trying to insert herself into a tragedy. "We need to fight back," Sarah said, surprising herself with the determination in her voice. "I'm not going to let her destroy my life and get away with it." "What do you want to do?" Elena asked. Sarah thought about everything she had learned, about the pattern of Valentina's crimes, about the other women who had been victimized and silenced. "I want to expose her," Sarah said. "All of it. Her real identity, her criminal history, everything. If she wants to play this game on social media, then let's give her a real fight." That evening, Sarah sat down at Elena's computer and began typing. She was going to tell her story, but she was also going to tell Jessica's story and the stories of all the other women Valentina had victimized. She was going to turn Valentina's own weapon against her. But as Sarah worked on her exposé, she had no idea that Valentina was watching her every move, planning a counterattack that would make everything they had faced so far look like child's play. Sarah's blog post went live at midnight. She titled it, "The Woman Behind the Mask: My Experience with a Career Con Artist," and laid out everything she had learned about Valentina's true identity and criminal history. She included Jessica's story, documented the pattern of fraud and manipulation, and provided evidence of the forged marriage certificate. By morning, the post had been shared over 10,000 times. "Sarah, wake up," Elena said, shaking her gently. "You need to see this." Sarah opened her eyes to find Elena holding her laptop, a huge grin on her face. "What happened?" "Your story is everywhere. It's been picked up by 3 major news outlets, and women are coming forward with their own experiences with Valentina. Look at this." Elena scrolled through the comments section, which was filled with messages of support and similar stories. Women from across the country were sharing their encounters with Victoria Bratton, adding pieces to the puzzle of her criminal career. "There's more," Elena said. "The FBI has reached out. Apparently, they've been tracking Victoria for years in connection with several interstate fraud cases. Your blog post provided them with connections they hadn't made before." Sarah sat up, her pregnancy making the movement awkward. "The FBI, they want to interview you and Jessica. Sarah, you might have just brought down a major criminal." Before Sarah could fully process this information, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus's name. "Sarah, thank God you're okay. Is Elena with you?" "I'm here," Elena said, taking the phone on speaker. "What's wrong?" "Michael woke up about an hour ago. The first thing he asked about was Sarah and the baby. He doesn't remember marrying Valentina. In fact, he doesn't remember much of the past month." Sarah's heart jumped. "Is he okay?" "He has a concussion and some memory loss, but the doctors think it's temporary. But Sarah, here's the important part. He's been asking for you. And when Valentina tried to speak to him as his wife, he was completely confused. He kept asking where you were." Sarah looked at Elena, who was already grabbing her car keys. "We're coming to the hospital," Elena said. "Wait," Marcus said. "There's something else. I've been going through the company's financial records while Michael has been unconscious. The gambling debts are real, but I don't think Michael incurred all of them. Someone has been using his identity to place bets and take out loans." "Valentina. That's what I think. And if I'm right, Michael might be as much a victim in this as you are." The drive to the hospital was tense with possibility. Could it be that Michael had been manipulated just like the other men in Valentina's past? Sarah tried not to hope too much, but the idea that her husband might not be the villain in this story was almost too good to believe. At the hospital, they found chaos. Valentina was in the hallway arguing with a security guard, her composed mask finally slipping. "I'm his wife," she was saying shrilly. I have legal rights. Ma'am, the patient has requested that you not be allowed in his room. The security guard replied calmly. He's asking for Sarah Martinez. Cheryl, when Valentina saw Sarah approaching, her expression turned venomous. This is your doing, she hissed. You and your little blog post. You have no idea what you've started. I know exactly what I've started, Sarah replied, surprised by the steel in her own voice. I've started telling the truth. Valentina stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Michael might not remember me now, but he will. And when he does, he'll remember why he chose me over you. Actually, said a new voice, he's remembering quite a lot. They turned to see Michael in the doorway of his hospital room, leaning on a walker but looking much more alert than Sarah had expected. His silver hair was disheveled and he had a bandage on his forehead, but his eyes were clear and focused. Sarah, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I remember everything now. What I did to you, to us, to our baby. I don't know how to begin to apologize. Sarah felt her knees go weak. This was the Michael she had married 20 years ago, the man who had cried when her mother died, who had held her through 3 miscarriages before this pregnancy. Michael, Valentina said, moving toward him. Honey, you're confused. The concussion is affecting your memory. We're married. Remember, we have a baby on the way. Michael looked at her with disgust. I remember you, Victoria, or Valentina, or whatever name you're using this week. I remember how you manipulated me, how you made me think Sarah was trying to sabotage my business. I remember the drugs you gave me, the way you convinced me I was making decisions that I never would have made in my right mind. You're hallucinating, Valentina said desperately. The doctors said head injuries can cause paranoid delusions. The only delusion was thinking I could ever love someone like you, Michael said firmly. Security, please escort this woman from the hospital and call the police. I want to press charges for fraud, identity theft, and assault. You can't prove any of that, Valentina snarled, but Sarah could see panic in her eyes. Actually, we can, said a new voice from behind them. 2 men in dark suits approached the group, showing FBI badges. Victoria Bratton, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As the FBI agents cuffed Valentina, she looked at Sarah with pure hatred. This isn't over, she said. I have friends you can't imagine. This is just the beginning. As they led her away, Sarah felt like she could finally breathe for the first time in weeks. Michael reached for her hand. Sarah, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What I did to you, to our marriage, it's unforgivable. But I need you to know that it wasn't really me. She was drugging me, manipulating me, making me believe things that weren't true. Sarah looked at this man she had loved for 20 years, the father of her unborn child, and felt a confusing mix of relief and lingering hurt. I want to believe that, she said carefully. But Michael, even if you were being manipulated, you still made choices. You still chose to trust her over me. I know, he said, tears streaming down his face. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. If you'll let me. Elena stepped forward. Perhaps we should table this conversation until after we've sorted out the legal mess. Michael, we need to address the forged divorce papers and the fraudulent marriage to Valentina. Whatever you need, Michael said immediately. I'll sign anything, pay anything, do anything to fix this. Over the next few hours, the extent of Valentina's manipulation became clear. She had been slowly drugging Michael with a combination of substances that affected his judgment and memory. She had forged documents, stolen his identity for financial transactions, and systematically isolated him from everyone who might question her influence. It's a sophisticated operation, Agent Martinez from the FBI explained to Sarah and Elena. Victoria Bratton has been running similar cons for over a decade. Your blog post connected several cases we've been working on separately. What happens now? Sarah asked. She'll be charged federally for the interstate nature of her crimes. You and Michael will both need to testify, but given the evidence we have, She's looking at serious prison time. As evening approached, Sarah found herself alone with Michael in his hospital room. The silence between them was heavy with 20 years of history and the weight of everything that had happened. "I know you're probably thinking about divorce," Michael said quietly. "And I would understand if that's what you want. I've put you through hell." Sarah looked at him. This man who had been her partner, her best friend, her biggest disappointment, and now possibly her victim of the same woman who had tried to destroy her. "I don't know what I want," she said honestly. "I need time to process all of this, to figure out what's real and what was manipulation." "I understand. But Sarah, there's something I need you to know. Even when I was under her influence, even when I couldn't think clearly about anything else, I never stopped loving you and our baby. That was the one thing she couldn't take away from me." Sarah felt tears starting to fall. "I want to believe that. I do. But you hurt me so deeply. Michael, you made me question everything about myself, about our entire marriage. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust, whether we stay married or not. You and our baby are the most important things in the world to me." That night, Sarah lay in Elena's guest bed thinking about everything that had happened. The husband affair with Mistress that had started this nightmare had turned out to be something much more complex and sinister. Michael might be as much a victim as she was, but that didn't erase the pain he had caused or the choices he had made. She thought about the woman she had been a month ago, trusting, dependent, defined by her role as Michael's wife. That woman felt like a stranger now. The woman she was becoming was stronger, more independent, more aware of her own worth. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, but this time she wasn't afraid to answer it. "Mrs. Martinez, this is Rebecca Torres from the Washington Post. I'd like to interview you about your experience with Victoria Bratton. Your story could help other women avoid becoming victims." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment. A month ago, the idea of speaking to the press about her private life would have horrified her. But now, she realized she had a platform and a voice that could make a difference. She was no longer just Sarah Martinez, the billionaire's wife. She was Sarah Martinez, the woman who had exposed a career criminal and potentially saved countless other victims. She typed back, "I'd be happy to speak with you." As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah placed her hands on her belly and spoke softly to her baby. "Your daddy and I have some things to figure out, little one, but I promise you this. You're going to be born to a mother who knows her own strength. And whatever happens with your father, you'll always have that." For the first time in weeks, Sarah slept peacefully. But in a jail cell across town, Victoria Bratton was making phone calls to people who made the FBI look like mall security guards. The game was far from over. 3 weeks later, Sarah was settling into a routine that would have been unimaginable a month earlier. She woke up in Elena's guest room, spent her mornings in therapy sessions, her afternoons working on her blog that had become a resource for other women dealing with similar situations, and her evenings attending virtual support groups for fraud victims. The therapy sessions with Dr. Rebecca Kim had been Elena's idea, but Sarah had embraced them wholeheartedly. Dr. Kim specialized in pregnancy trauma and identity reconstruction after betrayal. "Tell me about who you were before you met Michael," Dr. Kim said during their Tuesday session. Sarah thought for a moment. "I was ambitious. I had just gotten promoted to senior marketing executive at Peterson and Associates. I was 22 and felt like I could conquer the world." "What happened to that ambition when you married Michael?" "I guess I channeled it into supporting his dreams instead of pursuing my own. At first, it felt like we were building something together. His success was our success. But somewhere along the way, his success became more important than yours." Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of it sink in. "I lost myself trying to be the perfect wife. I convinced myself that my fulfillment came from his achievements, from being the woman behind the successful man. And now I realize that I was never the woman behind the man. I was a successful woman in my own right who made the mistake of thinking someone else's dreams were more important than my own." Dr. Kim smiled. That's a profound realization. How does it feel to reconnect with that part of yourself? Terrifying and exhilarating at the same time? The blog had become Sarah's unexpected passion project. What had started as a way to expose Victoria's crimes had evolved into a platform for discussing financial abuse, pregnancy during crisis, and midlife reinvention. She was getting messages from women around the world who were dealing with similar situations. Sarah's story, Rebuilding After Betrayal, had gained over 50,000 followers in 3 weeks. Publishers were reaching out about book deals, and she had been invited to speak at a conference about domestic financial abuse. "I feel like Elizabeth Gilbert," Sarah told Elena over coffee one morning. "Not the eat, pray, love part, but the part where she realizes she has to save herself." "You're doing more than saving yourself," Elena replied. "You're creating a roadmap for other women to follow." Michael had been calling daily since his release from the hospital, but Sarah had asked for space while she worked through her feelings in therapy. He was living in a hotel while their home was processed as evidence in Victoria's fraud case. "I think I'm ready to talk to him," Sarah told Dr. Kim during their Thursday session, "but I want to do it on my terms, in a controlled environment." "What would that look like?" "I want to meet him here, in your office, with you mediating. I have things I need to say to him, and I need to hear his side of what happened." Dr. Kim agreed to facilitate the meeting, and the next week, Sarah found herself sitting across from Michael in the familiar therapy office. He looked thinner than before, older somehow, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said quietly. "I'm not doing this for you," Sarah replied. "I'm doing this for me and for our baby. I need to understand what happened so I can decide how to move forward." For the next hour, with Dr. Kim's guidance, they talked through the months leading up to Victoria's entrance into their lives. Michael described how Victoria had slowly undermined his confidence in Sarah, convincing him that Sarah was trying to sabotage his business. "She showed me emails that appeared to be from you to our competitors, sharing proprietary information," Michael explained. "Now I know they were fake, but at the time, combined with the drugs she was giving me, they seemed real." "What drugs, Doctor?" Kim asked. "Rohypnol mixed with small amounts of LSD. The FBI found traces in my hair follicles. It's designed to make you suggestible and paranoid while still being functional enough to make business decisions." Sarah felt sick. "How long was she drugging you?" "The FBI thinks about 4 months. She was putting it in my coffee every morning when she brought me my daily briefing." "But Michael," Sarah said, leaning forward, "even drugged, even manipulated, you still chose to sleep with her. You still chose to betray our marriage vows?" Michael's face crumpled. "I know, and that's the part I can't forgive myself for. Even if my judgment was impaired, I still made that choice. I still hurt you in the worst possible way." "Yes, you did," Sarah said firmly. "And I need you to understand that whatever happens between us, that betrayal will always be part of our history. I understand, and I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust, if you'll let me." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not the same woman I was before this happened. I can't go back to being the wife who lives for your success and has no identity of her own." "I don't want you to go back to that," Michael said earnestly. "I fell in love with the ambitious, independent woman I met 23 years ago. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that person, and I let you lose sight of her too." "I'm finding her again," Sarah said. "And she's not sure she wants to be married to someone who could be so easily manipulated into betraying her." Dr. Kim intervened gently. "Sarah, you don't have to make any permanent decisions today. The goal is communication and understanding, not resolution." "I know," Sarah said. "But I want Michael to understand that I'm not the same person who will sacrifice everything for his career and his happiness. I have my own dreams now, my own goals." "What are they?" Michael asked. "I want to turn my blog into a book. I want to start a nonprofit organization for women dealing with financial abuse. I want to raise our child to be strong and independent, regardless of gender." Those are wonderful goals, Michael said, and I want to support them, if you'll let me. Supporting them means accepting that they might be more important to me than your business sometimes. It means sharing domestic responsibilities. It means accepting that I'm going to have opinions about financial decisions that affect our family. I understand. Do you? Sarah challenged. Because for 20 years, you've been making unilateral decisions about our life, the house, the investments, our social calendar, even when to have children. I went along with it because I thought that's what a good wife did, but I'm not going to be that wife anymore. Michael was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I treated our marriage like a benevolent dictatorship, and I justified it by telling myself I was protecting you from stress. But really, I was just comfortable being in control. And I was comfortable being taken care of, Sarah admitted. But that dynamic made us both vulnerable to someone like Victoria. As the session wound down, Sarah felt like they had made progress in understanding what had gone wrong, but she was no closer to knowing whether their marriage could be salvaged. I need more time, she told Michael as they prepared to leave. I'm not ready to make any decisions about our future. I understand. And Sarah, I'm proud of what you've built with your blog and your advocacy work. You're helping people, making a real difference. I should have been supporting those instincts in you all along. That evening, Sarah attended her virtual support group for women who had experienced betrayal during pregnancy. The group had formed organically through her blog, and Sarah had become an unofficial leader. How's everyone doing this week? She asked as the familiar faces appeared on her laptop screen. Maria from Texas shared that she had started divorce proceedings against her husband after discovering his gambling addiction. Jennifer from Florida had gotten a restraining order against her abusive ex-boyfriend. Lisa from Oregon had started her own business after her partner's financial crimes left her with nothing. What about you, Sarah? Asked Diana from New York. How was the meeting with Michael? Complicated, Sarah admitted. I think I understand better what happened and why, but I still don't know if I can trust him again. Trust is earned, said Maria, and it takes time. Don't let anyone pressure you into making decisions before you're ready. My therapist says I need to figure out who I am as an individual before I can figure out who I want to be in a relationship, Sarah said. That's wise, said Jennifer. I spent so many years defining myself through my relationships that I forgot I had value on my own. After the call ended, Sarah sat in the quiet of Elena's guest room and reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 weeks ago, she had been a pregnant housewife whose biggest concern was decorating the nursery. Now she was a published writer, an advocate for other women, and a person discovering her own strength for the first time in decades. She opened her laptop and began writing her next blog post, Finding Yourself After Betrayal, the Unexpected Gift of Crisis. When my world fell apart 6 weeks ago, I thought I was losing everything that mattered. My marriage, my financial security, my vision of the future I thought I was building. What I discovered instead was something I had lost years ago without even realizing it myself. For 20 years, I defined my worth through my husband's success and my role as his supporter. I thought I was being a good wife, but really, I was disappearing a little more each day. It took a crisis to wake me up to what I had given up. Now, at 42 and pregnant with my first child, I'm rebuilding not just my life, but my identity. I'm remembering the ambitious young woman I used to be and combining her strength with the wisdom I've gained through experience. If you're reading this because your own world has fallen apart, I want you to know something: you are stronger than you think. You have survived 100% of your worst days so far. And sometimes, what feels like an ending is actually a beginning. You are not too old to start over. You are not too damaged to deserve love. You are not responsible for other people's choices, but you are responsible for your own response to them. Take back your power, tell your story, trust your instincts, and remember that the woman you were before someone else's betrayal is still in there, waiting for you to set her free. As Sarah hit publish on the post, she felt a familiar flutter in her belly. Her baby was moving, reminding her of the new life she was literally and figuratively building. She placed her hands on her rounded stomach and spoke softly. Your mom is learning how to be strong, little one, and I'm going to teach you that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion of you. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah felt genuinely hopeful about the future. But as she drifted off to sleep, she had no idea that Victoria Bratton's associates were planning something that would test her newfound strength in ways she couldn't imagine. Sarah woke to frantic pounding on Elena's front door at 6 a.m. She pulled on a robe and hurried downstairs to find Elena already at the door, speaking in hushed tones with someone on the other side. Sarah, Elena called, you need to see this. Standing on the doorstep was Valentina, or Victoria, looking nothing like the polished woman Sarah had known. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and she looked genuinely terrified. What is she doing here? Sarah asked, instinctively stepping back. Please, Victoria said, her voice shaking. I know you have every reason to hate me, but I need your help. They're going to kill me. Who's going to kill you? Elena asked sharply. The people I was working for. The ones who hired me to target Michael in the first place? Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What are you talking about? Victoria looked around nervously before stepping inside. Can we sit down? This is going to take a while to explain. Against her better judgment, Sarah found herself in Elena's living room listening to Victoria's story. It was even more complex and terrifying than she had imagined. I wasn't working alone, Victoria began. I'm part of a larger organization that targets wealthy men for financial exploitation. We call it strategic relationship management, but really it's organized crime. How does it work? Elena asked, her legal training taking over. They research potential targets, men with significant assets but personal vulnerabilities, gambling problems, ego issues, midlife crises. Then they send in operatives like me to exploit those vulnerabilities. Sarah felt sick. So Michael was always a target. This was never random. Your husband owes money to some very dangerous people. Sarah, not from gambling. That was just the cover story. He borrowed money from a criminal organization 2 years ago to cover some bad investments, thinking he could pay it back quickly. What kind of dangerous people? International money laundering, human trafficking. These aren't people who negotiate payment plans. Elena leaned forward. What does this have to do with you targeting Michael? When he couldn't pay them back, they decided to take over his assets through marriage fraud. I was supposed to marry him, gain control of his finances, and transfer everything to offshore accounts under their control. But you got arrested, Sarah pointed out. That's where everything went wrong. I was never supposed to get caught. When you started investigating and blogging about my past victims, it exposed the entire operation. Now they think I'm a liability. Sarah's mind was spinning. So you're saying that everything that happened, the affair, the manipulation, the forged documents, that was all part of a criminal conspiracy? Yes. And now that I'm in custody, they're afraid I'll make a deal with the FBI to reduce my sentence. They've put a contract out on me. Why should we believe you? Elena asked. You've lied about everything else. Victoria pulled out her phone and showed them a text message. Keep your mouth shut or you and your new friends will end up in the Sound. They know where I am, Victoria said, her voice breaking. And they know about both of you. You're in danger because of what you've uncovered. Sarah felt her baby kick, as if responding to her spike in stress. What do you want from us? Help me make a deal with the FBI. I have information that could bring down the entire organization, but I need protection, and you need to know what you're up against. Elena stood up and began pacing. This is insane. You're asking us to help the woman who nearly destroyed Sarah's life. I know how this sounds, Victoria said, but think about it logically. If this organization is real, if they're as dangerous as I'm saying, then Sarah is already a target whether she helps me or not. At least this way, we can work together to bring them down. Sarah looked at this woman who had been her tormentor, now sitting in Elena's living room asking for protection. The irony wasn't lost on her. What kind of information do you have? Sarah asked. Names, bank account numbers, records of financial transactions. I've been documenting everything for years as insurance, in case something like this happened. Why didn't you just disappear like you did with your other victims? Victoria's mask slipped completely, and for the first time, Sarah saw genuine vulnerability in her eyes. Because this time it's different. This time they're not just after money. The organization is expanding into human trafficking, and I found out they're planning to kidnap wealthy women and children for ransom. When I refused to be part of that, I became a target myself. Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her belly. Children, specifically children of their financial targets. They figure grieving, desperate parents will pay anything to get their kids back. Elena stopped pacing. Sarah, I think we need to call Agent Martinez immediately. Wait, Victoria said. There's something else you need to know. They have someone inside the FBI. That's how they knew I was arrested so quickly. We can't trust just anyone. How do we know you're not lying about this too? Sarah asked. Victoria pulled out a tablet and showed them photographs that made Sarah's stomach turn. Bank statements showing millions of dollars in transactions. Photos of women who looked like they had been beaten, and worst of all, images of children who appeared to be in captivity. Jesus Christ, Elena whispered. This is what I've been part of, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. I told myself it was just white-collar crime, just stealing from rich men who could afford it. But it's so much worse than that. Sarah looked at this woman who had tried to destroy her life and felt an unexpected emotion. Pity. Victoria was also a victim, in her own way. What's your real story? Sarah asked. Before all this, Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I was trafficked when I was 15, brought to this country illegally and forced into prostitution. The organization that owns me now bought me from my traffickers when I was 20. They trained me to run financial scams instead of other things. I thought I was lucky. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. I've never been free. Sarah, every mark I've targeted, every life I've ruined, it was because I didn't have a choice. They own me. Elena sat back down, her expression softening. Why should we believe this isn't just another manipulation? Because I'm pregnant, Victoria said quietly. And it's not Michael's baby. Sarah felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. What? I lied about the pregnancy being Michael's to manipulate him, but I really am pregnant. One of the organization's bosses raped me when I was unsuccessful in getting Michael to transfer his assets quickly enough. If they kill me, they kill my baby too. The room fell silent except for the sound of the morning traffic outside. Sarah stared at Victoria, trying to process everything she had heard. How do we know any of this is true? Elena asked. Because I'm about to give you proof that will put me in even more danger, Victoria said. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. This contains everything. Financial records, photographs, recordings of meetings, everything you need to bring down the entire operation. Why now? Sarah asked. Why are you suddenly willing to risk everything? Victoria placed her hand on her still flat stomach. Because I want my baby to have a chance at a normal life. The life I never had. Sarah looked at Elena, who was studying Victoria with a lawyer's skeptical eye. If we help you, Elena said carefully, what happens to Sarah's case against you? I'll plead guilty to everything and make full restitution. I'll testify about how the organization targeted Michael and manipulated both of you. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. 6 weeks ago, her biggest worry had been picking out paint colors for the nursery. Now she was deciding whether to trust a woman who had tried to destroy her life, but might be the key to stopping something much worse. What happens if we don't help you? Sarah asked. They kill me, and then they move on to their next targets. The list includes 3 other tech executives in Seattle, 2 in San Francisco, and 1 in Austin. Their wives and children will go through what you went through, or worse. Sarah thought about the women in her support group, about the blog followers who shared their stories of betrayal and abuse. She thought about her unborn child and the world she wanted to bring them into. "Elena," she said, turning from the window, "call Agent Martinez, but ask him to come here alone, and tell him to be very careful about who he trusts within the Bureau." Elena nodded and reached for her phone. "Victoria," Sarah said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice, "if you're lying to us about any of this, if this is just another manipulation, I will personally make sure you never see freedom again." "I understand," Victoria said. "And Sarah, I'm sorry for everything I put you through, for the pain I caused. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I am genuinely sorry." Sarah looked at this woman who had been her enemy, who might now be her ally, who was certainly another victim of the same system that had tried to destroy her family. "Sorry doesn't undo the damage," Sarah said, "but helping us stop this organization might be the beginning of making amends." As they waited for Agent Martinez to arrive, Sarah reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. She had started this journey as a betrayed wife seeking justice for a simple affair. Now she was potentially helping to bring down an international criminal organization. The pregnant wife and mistress team up against common enemy situation was not something she could have imagined 6 weeks ago. But as her mother used to say, life has a way of making you stronger than you ever thought you could be. Outside, the Seattle rain had started again, but this time it felt cleansing rather than ominous. Sarah placed her hands on her belly and spoke silently to her baby. "Your mom is about to do something very brave. Little one, I hope someday you'll be proud of the choices I'm making to keep you safe." Agent Martinez arrived within an hour, but he didn't come alone. Sarah's heart sank when she saw 2 other agents with him, remembering Victoria's warning about someone inside the FBI. "Mrs. Martinez, Miss Vasquez," Agent Martinez said formally. "And Ms. Bratton, I understand you have information you'd like to share." Victoria looked nervous as she eyed the other agents. "I asked to speak with you alone. These are my colleagues, Agents Chen and Rodriguez. They're part of the task force investigating your case." Victoria's face went pale. "Agent Chen, could you tell me your first name?" "David," the agent replied. Victoria relaxed slightly. "You're Marcus's brother. Jessica told me about you." Agent Chen looked surprised. "You know Jessica. I destroyed her marriage to your brother 2 years ago. It's part of the pattern I need to tell you about." For the next 3 hours, Victoria laid out everything: the organization, the systematic targeting of wealthy men, the money laundering, and the escalation into human trafficking. She handed over the flash drive and provided documentation that made Agent Martinez's face grow increasingly grim. "This is much bigger than we realized," he said finally. "Mrs. Martinez, you and Ms. Vasquez are going to need protection." "What kind of protection?" Elena asked. "Safe house. Probably. At least until we can make arrests based on this information." Sarah felt her world tilting again. For how long? Hard to say. Could be weeks. Could be months. "I can't go into hiding," Sarah protested. "I have a blog, speaking engagements, a life I'm trying to rebuild." "Sarah," Agent Martinez said gently, "these people have already demonstrated they're willing to kill to protect their operation. Your safety and the safety of your baby have to be the priority." Victoria spoke up. "There might be another way. If we can identify the person inside the FBI, we could feed them false information to draw the organization out." "Absolutely not," Agent Chen said immediately. "That would put all of you in even more danger. What if we made it look like I was cooperating fully with the FBI, but actually held back the most important information?" Victoria continued. "They might think they have time to clean up loose ends before coming after me." Sarah found herself in the surreal position of strategizing with the woman who had tried to destroy her life about how to take down international criminals. "What's the most important information?" Sarah asked. "The identity of their money manager. He's the one who handles all the offshore accounts. Without him, they can't access the money they've stolen." Agent Martinez leaned forward. "Who is it?" Victoria hesitated. Someone you know, someone who's been feeding information to the organization about FBI investigations? Who? Agent Martinez demanded. Assistant Director Williams. The room fell silent. Agent Chen whistled low under his breath. Are you certain? Agent Martinez asked. Victoria nodded. I have recordings of phone calls, copies of wire transfers, everything you need to prove it. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I wasn't sure I could trust you. For all I knew, you were working for him too. Sarah's phone buzzed with a call from Michael. She looked at the caller ID, then at the agents. Should I answer? Put it on speaker, Agent Martinez said. Sarah. Michael's voice sounded strained. Where are you? I went to Elena's office and they said she wasn't in today. I'm safe, Sarah said carefully. What's wrong? Marcus is missing. He didn't show up for our meeting this morning, and his hotel says he never checked out, but he's not in his room. Sarah felt ice in her veins. She looked at Agent Chen, who was already pulling out his phone. Michael, I need you to go somewhere public and stay there, Sarah said. Don't go home. Don't go to the office. Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? Agent Martinez gestured for the phone. Mr. Martinez, this is Agent Martinez with the FBI. We need you to come to the address I'm about to give you immediately. And be very careful. Watch for anyone following you. After Michael hung up, Victoria looked at the group with fear in her eyes. They're accelerating the timeline. If they took Marcus, it means they know I'm talking to you. Why would they take Marcus? Sarah asked. Because he has access to all of Michael's financial accounts. If they can't get the money through me, they'll get it through him. Elena stood up and began pacing again. This is insane. How did our lives get this complicated? Because good people became targets of very bad people, Agent Martinez said. But we're going to end this. Michael arrived 20 minutes later, escorted by 2 more FBI agents. He looked haggard and confused as Sarah quickly filled him in on everything they had learned. So Marcus was kidnapped because of my debts to these people? Michael asked. Your debts that you didn't actually incur? Victoria corrected. They set you up from the beginning, making it look like you owed them money so they could justify taking over your assets. How much money are we talking about? Elena asked. Victoria pulled up files on her tablet. Between your legitimate assets and the money they've moved through accounts in your name, probably close to $50 million. Michael sat down heavily. 50 million? How is that possible? Shell companies, forged documents, identity theft. They've been building this for 2 years. Sarah looked at her husband, this man she was trying to decide whether to trust again, and realized they were both victims of something much larger than a simple affair. What do we do now? She asked. Agent Martinez was conferring quietly with his colleagues. When he turned back to the group, his expression was serious. We're going to set a trap. Victoria, you're going to make contact with your handler and tell them you've made a deal with the FBI. You're going to offer to help them recover the money in exchange for protection? That's suicide, Victoria protested. Not if we do it right. We'll have you under full surveillance, and we'll be ready to move in when they show themselves. What about Marcus? Michael asked. Finding him is our top priority, but Victoria might be our best chance of locating where they're holding him. Sarah felt her baby kick, a reminder of what was at stake. What about our safety while all this is happening? Was safe house, Agent Martinez said firmly. All of you, until this is resolved. For how long? Sarah asked. However long it takes. That evening, Sarah found herself in an anonymous suburban house 30 miles outside Seattle, along with Elena, Michael, and Victoria. FBI agents were stationed outside, and all their phones had been confiscated and replaced with secure devices. This feels like a bad movie, Elena said, looking around the generic furnished living room. At least it's better than the alternative, Victoria said quietly. Sarah was having trouble processing everything that had happened in one day. This morning she had been a woman rebuilding her life after betrayal. Now she was in witness protection, working with her former enemy to bring down international criminals. I need some air, she said, stepping out onto the small back patio under the watchful eye of an FBI agent. Michael followed her out. Are you okay? Define okay, Sarah said, settling into a patio chair. I'm pregnant, in hiding, working with the woman who tried to destroy our marriage. And apparently we're both victims of a criminal conspiracy that makes The Godfather look like a children's book. I keep thinking this is all my fault, Michael said. If I hadn't been so vulnerable to manipulation, if I hadn't made those bad investments in the first place. Michael, Sarah said, looking at him seriously, you were targeted by professional criminals who specialize in this kind of thing. Yes, you made mistakes, but you didn't ask to be victimized. Does that mean you forgive me? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching the sun set over the unfamiliar neighborhood. I'm starting to understand that forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a process. And part of that process is understanding what really happened versus what I thought happened. What do you mean, I thought you chose another woman over me? I thought you decided I wasn't enough for you anymore. But now I understand that you were systematically manipulated and drugged by people who knew exactly how to exploit your weaknesses. Does that make a difference? It makes a difference in understanding what happened. But Michael, even if you were manipulated, you still made choices that hurt me. The drugs didn't make you a different person. They just lowered your inhibitions and affected your judgment. Michael nodded. I know, and I take full responsibility for those choices. Good, because if we're going to have any chance of rebuilding our marriage, it has to be based on honesty and mutual respect. I can't go back to being the woman who exists only to support your dreams. I don't want you to be that woman. I fell in love with someone strong and independent, and I want to be married to that person. Sarah felt her baby kick again, and she placed Michael's hand on her belly. Feel that? Michael's face lit up as he felt their child moving. Strong kicks. Strong baby, Sarah said. This little one is going to be born into a very different world than I imagined. But maybe that's not a bad thing. What do you mean? I mean they're going to be born to parents who know how to fight for what matters, who understand that sometimes you have to take risks to protect the people you love. Inside the house, Victoria was meeting with Agent Martinez to plan the next day's operation. Sarah watched through the window as the woman who had been her enemy worked to protect her unborn child and help bring down the organization that had controlled her life. This is all so surreal, Sarah said. What is? 6 weeks ago, I thought the worst thing that could happen to me was discovering my husband was having an affair. Now I'm in witness protection working with that woman to stop international criminals. Life has a way of putting things in perspective, Michael said. It does. And the perspective I'm getting is that I'm stronger than I ever knew. We both are. As darkness fell over their temporary refuge, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The pregnant wife testifies against billionaire husband scenario she had imagined was nothing compared to the reality of what they were facing. But she wasn't the same woman who had sat in that ultrasound room 6 weeks ago. That woman had been dependent, trusting to a fault, defined by her relationship to others. This woman was fierce, independent, and fighting not just for herself but for other potential victims. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and potentially the resolution of a criminal case that could affect countless lives. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Her baby kicked again, and she smiled. Your parents are about to do something very brave. Little one, I hope you inherit our courage and our determination to do what's right, even when it's scary. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the doorway of the nursery in their new home, a modest but beautiful house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood. The walls were painted a soft yellow with hand-painted trees that Elena had helped her create during her nesting phase. Sunlight streamed through white curtains, and the room smelled faintly of the lavender sachets her mother had sent. Everything had changed, yet somehow everything felt right. The FBI operation had been successful beyond their wildest expectations. Victoria's cooperation had led to the arrest of 15 people, including Assistant Director Williams and the heads of the International Criminal Organization. Marcus had been rescued unharmed, though his kidnappers had tried to force him to transfer Michael's assets to offshore accounts. The media attention had been intense, but ultimately positive. Sarah's story had inspired dozens of other women to come forward with their own experiences of financial abuse and manipulation. Her book, Rising from Betrayal, A Pregnant Wife's Journey to Justice, had become a bestseller, and she had launched the foundation she had dreamed about. Michael had entered therapy to address his vulnerability to manipulation and had restructured his company with full transparency measures. They had sold the ostentatious mansion and donated a significant portion of their wealth to organizations fighting human trafficking. Most importantly, they had found their way back to each other. "The nursery looks perfect," Michael said, appearing behind her with 2 cups of herbal tea. Sarah accepted the tea gratefully, her 39-week pregnant belly making even simple tasks challenging. "I can't believe she'll be here soon." "Elena Maria Martinez," Michael said, placing his hand on Sarah's belly. "She's going to be as strong as both her namesakes." They had chosen to name their daughter after Elena Vasquez, who had become not just Sarah's lawyer, but one of her closest friends, and after Sarah's mother, Maria, who had flown in from Portland to help with the baby's arrival. "Are you nervous?" Michael asked. "About the birth terrified? About being a mother excited? About our future hopeful?" It had taken months of couples therapy for them to rebuild trust, but they had done the work. Michael had to earn back Sarah's trust through actions, not words, and Sarah had to learn to trust her own judgment again after being so thoroughly deceived. Their marriage was different now, more equal, more honest, more work, but also more rewarding. "The birthing class graduates are coming over tonight for our final session," Sarah said. "Are you ready to practice being my labor coach one more time?" Michael grinned. "I've been practicing my encouraging phrases. You're doing amazing. Just breathe. I can see the head." "Please don't actually say I can see the head," Sarah laughed. "That's for the doctor to announce." The birthing class had been Sarah's idea. She had wanted to surround herself with other women who were bringing new life into the world during challenging circumstances. The group included 2 other single mothers, a military wife whose husband was deployed, and a woman whose husband had lost his job during her pregnancy. They had become her chosen family during the final months of her pregnancy. "Victoria's hearing is next week," Michael said, changing the subject. "Are you going to testify?" "Yes, she saved our lives." "Sarah, whatever she did before, she chose to do the right thing when it mattered most." Victoria was facing 5 years in federal prison, despite her cooperation with the FBI. She had given birth to a daughter 3 months earlier and was planning to give the baby up for adoption to a family that could provide the stability she couldn't. Sarah had surprised everyone, including herself, by offering to help Victoria find an adoptive family. It felt like the right thing to do. "I got a call from Rachel in Portland today," Sarah said. "She wants to interview you for her documentary about financial crimes against families. Are you comfortable with that? I think our story might help other people recognize the warning signs before it's too late." Sarah's blog had evolved into a comprehensive resource for women dealing with various forms of betrayal and abuse. She received messages daily from women around the world who had found strength in her story. The irony wasn't lost on her that Victoria's attempt to destroy her life had actually led to Sarah finding her true purpose. "Oh!" Sarah gasped suddenly, her hand flying to her belly. "What's wrong?" Michael asked immediately. I think my water just broke." They looked at each other for a moment. Then Michael sprang into action. He grabbed the hospital bag they had packed weeks ago, helped Sarah to the car, and called Elena to let her know they were on their way to the hospital. The labor was long, but uncomplicated. Sarah's birthing class friends took turns keeping her company. Along with Elena and her mother, Michael never left her side, holding her hand through each contraction and whispering words of encouragement. "She's crowning, Dr. Collins announced. One more push. Sarah." Sarah gathered all her strength, the strength she had discovered over these past months, and pushed her daughter into the world. Elena Maria Martinez arrived at 3:47 a.m., weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. "She's perfect," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face as Dr. Collins placed the baby on her chest. She's beautiful, Michael said, his own voice thick with emotion. Look what we made. Sarah. Sarah looked down at her daughter, this tiny person who had been with her through the darkest period of her life and was now here to witness the dawn of something new. Hello, little one, she whispered. Mama has so much to tell you about courage and strength and fighting for what's right. The first few weeks at home were a blur of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and the overwhelming love that comes with new parenthood. Sarah's mother stayed for 2 weeks, helping with meals and baby care while Sarah recovered. Elena visited almost daily, bringing coffee and helping with thank you notes for the gifts that continued to pour in from blog readers around the world. She's going to be spoiled, Elena said, watching baby Elena sleep in her bassinet surrounded by stuffed animals and blankets from well-wishers. Good, Sarah said. After everything we went through to get her here safely, she deserves to be spoiled. How are you feeling about everything now? Elena asked. Now that the dust has settled, Sarah considered the question as she nursed her daughter. Grateful, which sounds weird, considering everything we went through. How so? If Victoria hadn't targeted us, I might have lived my entire life as half a person. I might never have discovered what I was capable of. I might have raised my daughter to believe that her worth depended on someone else's opinion of her. You're a different person than you were a year ago. I'm the same person. I just finally know who that person is. Michael appeared in the doorway, home from his first day back at work since Elena's birth. How are my girl? He asked, kissing Sarah's forehead and stroking their daughter's cheek. Perfect, Sarah said. How was work? Good. Marcus is doing well as interim CEO while I transition to a more advisory role. It feels good to step back and focus on what really matters. Which is this, Michael said, gesturing to their small family. You two are my real success story. That evening, as Sarah watched Michael give Elena her bath while singing off-key lullabies, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The betrayed pregnant wife rebuilds life after husband's criminal conviction storyline had become something much more beautiful, a story of redemption, forgiveness, and the power of choosing love over fear. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, Sarah felt a familiar spike of anxiety, but when she read the message, she smiled. Mrs. Martinez, this is Jennifer from your support group. I wanted you to know that I filed for divorce today, and I'm finally free. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to rebuild after betrayal. Your story gave me the courage to save myself and my children. Sarah saved the message and added it to the folder of similar messages she had received over the past few months. Each one reminded her that her pain had served a purpose, that her willingness to share her story had helped other women find their own strength. As she prepared for bed, Sarah looked in the mirror and saw someone she barely recognized from a year ago. This woman had laugh lines around her eyes, confidence in her posture, and a sense of purpose that radiated from within. She was no longer Sarah Martinez, the billionaire's wife. She was Sarah Martinez, author, advocate, mother, and survivor. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Thank you, she whispered to her reflection, though she wasn't sure who she was thanking. Life, perhaps, for giving her the challenges that led to her transformation. Or maybe she was thanking the woman in the mirror for having the courage to fight for something better. As she settled into bed next to Michael, with baby Elena sleeping peacefully in her bassinet nearby, Sarah felt a deep sense of contentment. They had built something real from the ashes of their old life, something based on honesty and mutual respect and love that had been tested by fire. But just as she was drifting off to sleep, her phone buzzed with another message. This one made her blood run cold. Beautiful family, congratulations on your new beginning. We'll be in touch soon. A friend of Victoria's. The message included a photo taken through their bedroom window that very evening. Sarah's victory was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. Sarah stared at the threatening message, her heart pounding so hard she was afraid it would wake the baby. With shaking hands, she woke Michael and showed him the phone. Call the FBI, he whispered immediately, already reaching for his secure phone. Within an hour, their house was surrounded by federal agents, and Agent Martinez was in their living room taking their statement while Elena slept peacefully in her nursery, unaware that her family was once again in danger. "This doesn't make sense," Agent Martinez said, studying the message. "We arrested the entire organization. Victoria's been in prison for 3 months. Could this be copycat criminals?" Elena Vasquez asked. She had arrived within minutes of Sarah's call, her lawyer instincts overriding the late hour. "Or could we have missed someone?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady as she nursed baby Elena. Agent Martinez was already on his phone with the FBI tech team, having them analyze the message and the photograph. "The good news is that this gives us actionable intelligence. Whoever sent this is still local and still surveilling you." "The bad news?" Michael asked. "The bad news is that someone connected to Victoria's organization is still free and apparently still interested in your family." They spent the rest of the night in their living room while FBI agents swept the house for listening devices and cameras. Sarah tried to process how quickly her newfound peace had been shattered. "I should have known it was too easy," she said to Elena. "I should have known they wouldn't just give up after losing $50 million. "Sarah, you can't blame yourself for this," Elena replied. "You did everything right. You helped bring down a criminal organization. This isn't your fault." "Then why does it feel like I'm being punished for doing the right thing?" Before Elena could answer, Agent Martinez returned from his phone call with a grim expression. "We have a problem. A big one." "What now?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Victoria escaped from federal prison 2 days ago. The warden tried to keep it quiet while they searched for her. But she's gone." Sarah felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. How is that possible? Someone with significant resources and inside knowledge helped her. "We're looking at a coordinated effort involving multiple people." "So the message wasn't from Victoria's associates?" Michael said slowly. "It was from Victoria herself." "That's what we think. And Sarah, there's something else. We found out why she really cooperated with us." "What do you mean?" Agent Martinez pulled out a tablet and showed them surveillance footage from the prison. Victoria was meeting with someone in the visitor's room, but the video quality was too poor to identify the other person. "We think Victoria's cooperation was part of a larger plan. She gave us enough information to satisfy the courts and get a reduced sentence, but she held back the most important details, such as the location of the organization's main financial assets. $50 million is still missing, and we think Victoria knows where it is." Sarah looked down at her sleeping daughter and felt a cold rage building in her chest. "So she used us. Again." "It's worse than that," Agent Martinez continued. "We think the person who helped her escape was Dr. Elena Vasquez." Sarah's world tilted completely off its axis. She looked at Elena, who was sitting right beside her, and saw her face go pale. "That's impossible," Sarah said. "Elena has been helping me this entire time. She's been my rock through all of this." "Sarah," Elena said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "No, no, you're not about to tell me that you've been working against me this whole time." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant for you to get hurt." Agent Martinez stepped forward. "Elena Vasquez, you're under arrest for aiding in the escape of a federal prisoner and conspiracy to commit fraud." "Wait," Sarah said, standing up with baby Elena still in her arms. "What is happening right now?" Elena looked at Sarah with genuine anguish in her eyes. "Victoria is my half-sister." The room fell completely silent, except for the sound of Sarah's sharp intake of breath. "What?" Sarah whispered. "Our mother gave Victoria up for adoption when she was born. I didn't know she existed until she contacted me 3 years ago. She told me she was in trouble, that she was being forced to commit crimes by dangerous people. So you helped her target me." Sarah's voice was barely audible. "No, I had no idea she was targeting you until you showed up at my office asking for help with your divorce. By then, I was already emotionally invested in protecting her, and I convinced myself that I could help both of you." Michael spoke up for the first time. How long have you been working with her? I wasn't working with her, Elena said desperately. I was trying to help her get free from the people who were controlling her. When she asked me to help her escape from prison, she told me it was because they were going to kill her. And you believed her? Agent Martinez asked. She's my sister. She showed me evidence that there were contracts out on her life, that the only way she could survive was to disappear completely. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. So everything you've done for me, all the legal help, the friendship, the support, it was all about protecting Victoria. No, Elena said emphatically. Sarah, my friendship with you is real. My desire to help you is genuine. I couldn't choose between helping you and saving my sister's life. Where is she now? Agent Martinez demanded. Elena was crying now. I don't know. I helped her get out of the prison transport van yesterday morning, but she was supposed to disappear immediately. I had no idea she was planning to contact you. Sarah looked at this woman who had been her anchor through the darkest period of her life and realized she was looking at another stranger. How many people in her life had been lying to her? The trust fund, Sarah said suddenly. You had access to all my financial information. Victoria knew about the trust fund because you told her. Elena's silence was confirmation enough. Agent Martinez was already calling for backup. We need to assume that Victoria has been planning this for months. She may have resources and escape plans that we're not aware of. What does she want? Michael asked. Money, Agent Martinez said. It's always about money with her, but now it's personal too. Sarah's testimony helped put her in prison. Sarah's story exposed her entire operation. Victoria blames Sarah for destroying her life. I destroyed her life, Sarah said incredulously. She tried to destroy mine. Criminals rarely see themselves as the villain in their own story, Agent Martinez said grimly. As the FBI agents prepared to escort Elena away, she turned to Sarah one more time. Sarah, I know you have no reason to trust me, but please listen. Victoria is more dangerous now than she's ever been. She's not thinking rationally. She's obsessed with the idea that you stole her life, her freedom, her child's future. What are you saying? I'm saying that she's not going to stop until she's taken everything from you that you took from her. Your husband, your baby, your freedom. How do I protect my family? Elena looked at baby Elena sleeping peacefully in Sarah's arms. Don't trust anyone. Victoria is a master manipulator. She could have people you don't even suspect working for her. As the agents led Elena away, Sarah sank into the couch feeling utterly defeated. In one night, she had lost the person she thought was her closest friend and discovered that even her legal representation had been compromised. How many people in my life have been lying to me? She asked Michael. I don't know, he said honestly. But we're going to figure this out together. Over the next week, the FBI investigation revealed the full scope of Victoria's deception. She had been planning her escape for months, using Elena to gather intelligence about Sarah's life, finances, and support system. The pregnancy Victoria had claimed was fake, another manipulation designed to gain sympathy and leverage. But the most shocking revelation came when Agent Martinez arrived at their safe house with new information. We found Victoria, he said, and we understand what her endgame is. Where is she? Sarah asked. That's the problem. She's not hiding. She's operating in plain sight, using a new identity that she's been building for years. Agent Martinez showed them a series of photographs on his tablet. A woman with different hair color and style, but unmistakably Victoria, was shown at various locations around Seattle. She's been using the identity of Sarah Elena Martinez. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What? She's been building a false identity using a combination of your name and Elena's. She has credit cards, a driver's license, even a birth certificate in that name. And Sarah, she's been using it to apply for custody of your baby. That's impossible, Michael said. Elena was just born 3 weeks ago. She filed papers claiming that she's the baby's biological mother and that you kidnapped the child from her. She's alleging that you've been suffering from postpartum psychosis and that you pose a danger to the infant. Sarah felt like the room was spinning. How is that legal? How can she just claim to be someone else? It's not legal, but it can create enough confusion to cause problems, especially when combined with her other plan. What other plan? Agent Martinez hesitated. She's been posting on social media, building a narrative that she's a woman whose baby was stolen by a delusional former friend. She's using edited photos and fabricated evidence to make it look like Elena is actually her daughter. Sarah looked down at her sleeping baby and felt a primal fear unlike anything she had ever experienced. She's trying to steal my child. That's exactly what she's trying to do. And Sarah, there's more. She's been in contact with Child Protective Services, claiming that you're an unfit mother due to mental health issues. What kind of mental health issues? She's provided them with edited recordings of therapy sessions, manipulated to make it sound like you've been having violent fantasies about harming the baby. Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. But those recordings are privileged. How did she get them? Elena had copies in her case files. Victoria had access to everything. Michael stood up and began pacing. So what do? We fight back, Agent Martinez said. But you need to be prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better. Victoria is playing a long game, and she's been planning this for months. That night, as Sarah lay in the safe house trying to sleep while baby Elena rested beside her, she reflected on how completely her life had been infiltrated by people with hidden agendas. Her husband had been drugged and manipulated. Her lawyer had been working for her enemy. Her support system had been compromised. But as she looked at her daughter's peaceful face, Sarah realized something important. She had survived everything that had been thrown at her so far. She had exposed a criminal organization, helped bring down international criminals, and rebuilt her marriage on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. She was not the same vulnerable woman who had discovered her husband's affair 8 months ago. She was stronger now, smarter, more resilient. Victoria might have been planning this for months, but Sarah had something Victoria didn't: the love and support of people who genuinely cared about her, a legitimate claim to her own life and child, and most importantly, the truth on her side. You picked the wrong woman to mess with, Sarah whispered into the darkness. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Sarah had no idea that Victoria was watching the safe house from across the street, planning one final devastating blow that would test every ounce of strength Sarah had discovered within herself. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Sarah, Agent Martinez said as he burst into the safe house, we have a problem. Victoria has filed for an emergency restraining order against you, claiming that you've been stalking and threatening her. The judge granted it based on the fabricated evidence she provided. What does that mean? It means that legally, you're not allowed to be within 500 feet of her. And Sarah, she's requested a meeting with you to resolve this peacefully. She wants to meet at the courthouse this afternoon. It's obviously a trap, Michael said immediately. Of course it is, Agent Martinez agreed. But it might also be our only chance to end this. If we can get her to incriminate herself in a controlled environment, we can arrest her and end this nightmare once and for all. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter and made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. I'll do it. Sarah, no, Michael protested. It's too dangerous. Michael, this woman has been controlling our lives for almost a year. She's threatened our child, manipulated our marriage, and destroyed our sense of safety. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. What do you have in mind? Agent Martinez asked. I'm going to give Victoria exactly what she wants, a face-to-face confrontation. But this time, I'm going to be ready for her. That afternoon, Sarah walked into the courthouse wearing a wire and surrounded by undercover FBI agents. Victoria was waiting in a conference room, looking every inch the professional woman in a business suit with her hair styled to look remarkably similar to Sarah's. Hello, Sarah, Victoria said with a cold smile. You look tired. Motherhood must be exhausting. What do you want, Victoria? I want what's mine, my freedom, my money, and my daughter. Elena is not your daughter, Victoria laughed. Are you sure about that? I have medical records that say otherwise. I have witnesses who will testify that you stole my baby while I was incapacitated after giving birth. All fabricated. Prove it. Sarah looked at this woman who had caused so much pain and destruction and realized something profound. Victoria was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. But Sarah was no longer the naive, trusting woman who could be so easily deceived. You know what, Victoria? You're right. Victoria looked surprised. I'm right about what? You're right that I took something from you. I took your power. I took your ability to manipulate and control people without consequences. I exposed you for what you really are. And what am I? Sarah leaned forward, speaking directly into the wire she was wearing. You're a predator who targets vulnerable people and destroys families for money. You're a woman who would fake a pregnancy to manipulate a man into making financial decisions that benefit you. You're someone who would threaten an innocent baby to get revenge on her mother. Victoria's mask slipped for the first time, revealing the cold calculation underneath. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Actually, I do. You're capable of fraud, identity theft, manipulation, and conspiracy. But you know what you're not capable of. You're not capable of being a mother. You're not capable of genuine love or connection. And you're certainly not capable of taking my daughter from me. We'll see about that, Victoria snarled. I have evidence that you're an unfit mother. I have recordings of you talking about harming your baby. Edited recordings obtained illegally through attorney-client privilege violations, Sarah said calmly. Good luck getting those admitted in court. Victoria stood up abruptly. This isn't over. Sarah, I will destroy you and everything you love. No, Sarah said, also standing. This is over. Right now. Agent Martinez and 2 other FBI agents entered the room. Victoria Bratton, you're under arrest for violation of federal parole, fraud, identity theft, and making terroristic threats. As they handcuffed Victoria, she looked at Sarah with pure hatred. You think you've won. You have no idea what's coming for you. I have friends you've never heard of. People who make what you've been through look like a game. Maybe, Sarah said calmly. But I also have something you'll never understand. I have people who genuinely care about me, and I have the strength that comes from knowing who I really am. As they led Victoria away, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. 6 months later, Sarah was back in her home, which was no longer under FBI surveillance. Victoria had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison on multiple charges. Elena Vasquez had received a lighter sentence in exchange for her cooperation, but their friendship was over forever. Sarah's book had become an international bestseller, and her foundation was helping women around the world recognize and escape from manipulative relationships. She had been invited to speak at the United Nations about financial abuse and human trafficking. But the most important change was in her family life. Michael had stepped back from his company to become a full-time father, while Sarah pursued her advocacy work. Baby Elena was now walking and saying her first words, blissfully unaware of the drama that had surrounded her early life. Mama, Elena called out, toddling across the living room to Sarah, who was working on her laptop. Yes, baby girl, Sarah said, scooping up her daughter. Mama's here. Michael appeared in the doorway with coffee for both of them. How's the new chapter coming? Good, I'm writing about forgiveness and how it doesn't mean forgetting or excusing someone's behavior. It means choosing not to let their actions control your life anymore. Have you forgiven Victoria? Sarah considered the question as she watched their daughter play with her blocks. I've forgiven the broken person who was probably victimized herself as a child, but I'll never excuse the choices she made as an adult, and I'll never stop being grateful that we survived her attempts to destroy us. What about Elena? Elena Vasquez. That's harder. She genuinely helped me, but she also betrayed me. I think forgiveness, there is going to be a longer process. Michael sat beside them on the couch. I'm proud of you. You know, for everything you've accomplished, everything you've built from the nightmare she tried to create for us. We built it together, Sarah said. A better marriage, a stronger family, a life based on honesty instead of control. So what's next? Sarah looked at her daughter, who was babbling happily while stacking blocks, and then at Michael, who was watching both of them with such love in his eyes. Next, we just live our life. We raise our daughter to be strong and independent. We continue helping other families who are going through what we went through. And we remember that surviving something like what we survived makes us appreciate the quiet, normal moments even more. That evening, as Sarah was putting Elena to bed, her phone buzzed with an email. For a moment, she felt the familiar spike of anxiety, but the message was from a woman in Australia who had read her book and wanted to thank her for giving her the courage to leave an abusive relationship. Sarah smiled and saved the message with the hundreds of others like it that she had received over the past year. Each one reminded her that her pain had served a purpose, that her willingness to share her story had helped other women find their own strength. As she settled into bed next to Michael, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A year ago, she had been a woman who defined herself through her husband's success. Now she was a published author, an international speaker, and an advocate for women's rights. But most importantly, she was herself, fully, authentically, unapologetically herself. "I love you," Michael said, kissing her goodnight. "I love you too," Sarah replied. "All of you. Even the parts that made mistakes. Even the parts that were vulnerable to manipulation. Especially those parts. They make you human." As Sarah drifted off to sleep in the home they had rebuilt together, she felt a deep sense of peace. Victoria was in prison. Elena was healthy and happy. Their marriage was stronger than it had ever been. But just as she was falling asleep, her phone buzzed one more time. This message made her sit up in bed, her heart racing. "Congratulations on your beautiful family. Sarah, Victoria was right about one thing. You are stronger than we anticipated, but strength can be a liability when it threatens the wrong people. We'll be seeing you soon. The Martinez family." Sarah stared at the message, realizing that Victoria's final warning had been true. She had mentioned that Michael had brothers Sarah didn't know about, people who never forgot a slight against their family. The message included a recent photo of Sarah and Elena at the playground, taken from close range without Sarah's knowledge. As Sarah showed the message to Michael, who immediately began calling Agent Martinez, she realized that their victory over Victoria might have been just the first battle in a much longer war. But as she looked at her sleeping daughter and her husband, who was already taking action to protect their family, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected: anticipation rather than fear. "Let them come," she whispered to herself. "I'm not the same woman I was a year ago, and I'm not facing this alone." The next chapter of their story was about to begin, but this time, Sarah was ready for whatever came next. On her laptop screen, the cursor blinked at the end of her new manuscript, "The Wife Who Fought Back," a sequel, coming soon.